Welcome to the Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, it's Holden. I am an alcoholic. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today, I'm being joined by Emily.
Hello.
Hi, Emily. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am so excited to be here. Thank you again for having me. This is so exciting.
Well, thank you for joining us. Emily and I actually reached out to each other via Instagram, and they are a drag performer, I believe in Canada, correct?
Yes, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Canada. So that's, I've been to Canada once for a layover, but I've never
Okay.
been there like for vacation, but one day soon. And so I just wanted to get them on here and kind of discuss what their experience is with becoming sober and everything like that. And so, Emily, why don't you go in before we get into the topic of the episode? Why don't you take us through what led you needing or wanting to get sober? Give us a little bit of a backstory.
All right. So, honestly, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love talking about this. And so, I am 23 years old. So, I consider myself to be pretty young. So, I got sober when I was 21. So 2 years ago now. And the biggest reason, to be honest, especially back at that time, for me to begin my sobriety journey had nothing to do with myself, had nothing to do with respect for myself, wanting to get better. It all had to do with being embarrassed because I started out being a performer. I've done performing since, well, forever. Since I was a kid, I've loved doing it. But I've performed live music now. After I graduated high school, it was something I started taking more seriously. So I was gigging a lot, and my reputation was being an absolute disaster. And music at the end of the day is still something I'm very passionate about. And I kind of took a look in the mirror and was like, I am really embarrassing myself all the time. And I'm taking opportunities away from myself all the time. And I need to fix that in order to, continue my career, in order to continue wanting to get my foot in the door. Because right now I've slammed the door on my foot too many times to count. So
So,
yeah, that's how it started.
what was I forgot to ask at the beginning of the episode, but what was your drug of choice?
Alcohol, 100%.
Okay, so same here. I did dabble in a lot of other stuff, but alcohol was kind of like I've said in previous episodes, my main squeeze. So being a performer, especially in drag, we already know that the community, the queer community in general, is very ingrained into alcohol culture. We've kind of stated in other episodes that the gay community is kind of sponsored by Absolute Vodka. And so being a drag queen, I know when I did drag years ago that I had to take a few shots before getting the balls to even go on stage. So how have you been able to overcome stage fright and overcome that expectation of drinking pre-game show?
It honestly is something that, I sort of thought that by the time I got to this point, being 2 years sober, that it would just be so easy, but it's honestly a challenge every time in its own way. The way I explained it recently was it's not a challenge in the way that it used to be, but it's still a challenge, but I just feel like I have more tools to handle it now, and it's challenging in different ways than it was before. So you're absolutely right with that. Even when I was just performing music before I took to performing drag, 9 times out of 10, you're performing in bars, in clubs, in spaces that there's alcohol all around you. So it was definitely a test the first couple times, but like I said, I'm lucky to know performing is something that I grew up doing. I was going to theater school my whole life, so at the root of all of my trauma and my problems and the things I was going through, I knew that I loved being on stage and I knew that I loved performing. So a lot of the work that I had to do was sort of like, why am I taking this away from myself? Why am I, self-sabotaging in a sense? Like I know at the root of everything what I love. So it was more just about sort of working away those layers of why I was, taking those opportunities away. Because I've known since literally I was a child. Like I've been singing and dancing and running around. So So yeah, it was more of a matter of why am I, deciding to take away something from myself that is such a big part of who I am and always has been. So
And I know that you mentioned tools, and I know that previous episode we discussed that you did not go through any program to get sober. And at least for me, when we go through program, we try to remove ourselves from the bar seat. But being a performer, you can't really do that. So
no.
what tools do you use that, especially not program based, to allow yourself to go to these bars, these clubs, and not be tempted when there's liquor everywhere?
Well, I think what you said is a huge part of why I am so like I scream from the rooftops that I'm sober all the time. It's something I'm extremely open about, and I love being extremely open about. Because at the time of me getting sober, I didn't really have anybody that I could look to, especially being queer and especially being young. It was a very weird and awkward thing at first, and it felt almost really gross. And to be honest with you, I really wasn't ever planning on even being open about my sobriety until I was in a situation at my job, actually, like my just like day job that I work. I'm a barista, and somebody was talking about their problems with alcohol, and something inside me, I was literally a week into the like me being sober, a week into me like talking to therapists, and something inside of me just said, you just need to tell her, like you just need to be open and just tell her that you're doing this because she's being open right now, so you got to be open with her. So I did, and I just said, well, I'm a week sober, and I'm seeing a therapist right now. And she was like, wow, like is it scary? And I said a little bit, but that's okay, I'm navigating it. And she was like, wow. And that day, literally, it's like I said, a week into it, I was like, holy crap, like I've got power in this, like just by me being open and expressive about what I'm going through, I can inspire others who are maybe sober curious to take that leap, or even if they are struggling, to know that they're not alone, that I'm here too. And I've kind of joked that it's okay if I have to throw myself under the bus sometimes and be very open about my stuff, if it means that someone else can feel comfortable, because I also know what it's like to feel so uncomfortable. And I spent a lot of my life growing up feeling that way. I struggle with mental health problems. I'm also open about that. I'm diagnosed with BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. So there's a lot that comes with that, a lot of addiction that comes with that too. As well as addiction runs very rampant in my family. My mom has 5 brothers and they're all alcoholics. So it was something that was sort of not, I don't want to say destined to happen, but I knew it was something that I was going to struggle with eventually. And I did, and I crossed that bridge, and I'm happy to be open, especially in queer spaces, especially in bars, because if there's somebody sitting in that seat who is feeling uncomfortable, or who is struggling, or who knows inside, but they're maybe just not ready to take the steps yet, I'll throw myself under the bus for you if it means, making you feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about my sobriety openly as well, and I find that a lot of people, for one, defends their own drinking. The moment you tell somebody you're sober, they're just like, "Oh, well, I only drink on weekends."
Yes.
So, and I'm like, "Girl, chill." Um,
Yeah.
and for you with queer community, I mean, what is the support that you was the support you've received, and also the pushback that you've received? Because knowing that you're a performer in drag and you're constantly around the community, most likely with people that drink constantly, if not alcoholics themselves, or just really heavy drinkers. So have you received pushback when you tell other performers, "Oh no, I don't need a shot" or anything?
I'm very lucky that I actually have received quite the opposite. Because I'm quite new to drag. Like drag is something that I've only actually been doing for about 7 months, 8 months now, but I'm loving every minute of it. And that being said, I got sober before I started doing drag, so I came into the scene being open about my sobriety. And I have met so many other people who aren't open for their own reasons, or some of them are. It all depends, who have all come up to me and told me their stories. And that is so special to me. And that is another reason why, I do it. I actually did a number that incorporated my two loves of writing and performing music and also doing drag. And I did the song by Amy Winehouse, Rehab, but I changed all the lyrics to Yes, Yes, Yes. And I talked about, going to rehab and my experience. Not that I was actually in rehab, but it was more of just, talking about me getting sober, and people loved it. And I had a lot of people come up to me before that I didn't even know were sober that are and are very active members of the community. And we've got a lot of the Calgary drag scene here that's pretty open about being sober, and I'm very grateful for those people because they've made it a very less lonely experience. The only time I ever do worry about it is when I do a lot of like hosting and emceeing, because I want to talk about my sobriety, but I'm also, the bar is trying to sell drinks. So I think that's the only time where I'm like, what's the right thing to say? Because it's like you said, I'm not judging you. Like, you don't need to justify your drinking to me at all. Like, go off. Again, we're in a bar. I wouldn't expect people not to be drunk. Like, just because I'm doing my thing doesn't mean, we're all on different wavelengths. But that being said, I do worry. I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to like, run this bar's business to the ground. I'm not trying to tell people not to drink just because I'm not. So just trying to balance that. I'm trying to find my right. I'm still pretty new to hosting too, so trying to find my right wording with still being open about my sobriety, but also trying to sell those drinks at the bar.
That can be pretty difficult. I know when I go into the bar, just being in the bar, not giving the bar any money is kind of awkward in general because we go to bars to get fucked up. And there's no other reason to go to a bar. I'm sorry, there's really not. Um, and I find that difficult. So I know you said you're a performer. You've been doing drag for like 7 months. So do you find that maybe if you were drunk, like or still drinking, you would have never made the leap into drag? Do you think that sobriety helped you finally take that leap?
Like 500%. I owe it all to sobriety because I have been dreaming of doing drag since probably like 2017. I've had, drag playlists on my phone. I've had these ideas. I've been telling people, oh, I'm going to go and do this and this. And I haven't because, for the longest time, I was just like, my main priority was, like getting messed up, and it was just living in that state. And I would get opportunities still. And I was lucky for those music opportunities, but I usually would just kind of biff them. So, to be able to express every part of myself, not only just my sobriety, my music, my gender identity, to be able to challenge those roles in a bar too, and to be open and say, I'm here and I'm doing this sober and I'm expressing myself and who I am sober. It's actually been very, very healing to my inner child specifically, which is also why my drag is very clowny and just very out there, because I'm expressing all of that. I'm expressing the pain I've had, the trauma I've gone through, and the fact that it's quite a miracle that I'm here on this stage for you today. But again, so freaking happy to be. It has just been such a great experience. But I know I would have just continued doing my half-assed gigs and being drunk, and that would have been it for me. And then I would have sat there and still thought that I was the best thing ever, because I did. I really did. So also to be around people, to be new to a scene, and to have so many people to look up to that are not only more experienced in drag, but are sober too. Like, some of these people that have been doing it for 20 plus years are also sober. And I think it's so cool to have those mentors and to be able to look up to those people and have those allies in my life now. Like, it's very rewarding. And I feel for the first time in a very long time that I'm doing everything right. And it's really nice. It's a really nice feeling.
So you kind of discussed trauma, and I know that with me being in a 12-step program, we work through our trauma through a higher power. It seems like you doing drag, especially in a clowny aspect over the top, that seems to be the way you work through the trauma of the past to get through what you went through to be out on the other side positively.
Honestly, yes. It was really like the way that I've dealt with it, because there was a lot of, embarrassment that came with it too, because my alcoholism was very public, because I was gigging and because I was doing live gigs. I was blessed enough to be doing that since I pretty much turned 18, which is the legal age where I live. I know in America it's different, but here it's 18, which also was made things a little bit too easy, let me tell you. But yeah, so I was lucky enough to be doing that for so long that my alcoholism was very, very public. And a lot of people, unfortunately, saw my very public sort of downfall. And there was a lot of times, one time that really, really sticks to mind for me, I was playing a gig and it was about a 15-minute set. So, like 3 songs ish. And I literally was so intoxicated. my guitar was falling off of my body, and there was a member of the audience trying to put it back on my body, and it was almost something out of a cartoon. Like they had to basically give me the hook and like take me off of the stage, and then the rest of the night I was asking my friends, when am I performing, when am I perform, and they were like, girl, you did, and it was bad. Like, no, 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 no. So that was, and again, lucky me, I still have a scene that saw that and believed in me enough to see me come back, and they love me and they embrace me, and I'm so freaking grateful. And that's also why I'm really open about it, because people unfortunately had to see. So there's also a big part. I know that in like a lot of 12-step programs, there's a lot of like things practicing like forgiveness and things like that, and I've had to do a lot of that too, because I've had to sort of come back in with my tail between my legs and say, hey, like I've checked in on myself, and I realized that the way I was acting was really bad, not only towards myself, but just I was a disaster. As soon as someone saw me in, the bar, they were like, oh no, you know. So I also had to work on a lot of that forgiveness with myself, with the community, and I'm really really lucky that they were there for me through that. That a lot of people were.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, the similarities between you and I are kind of crazy because I mean, even though you're kind of rock bottom in a way, was you ruining something that you love to do, and kind of that realization of holy shit, like are you really willing to ruin your entire career in a way, or performing, or liking to perform via drinking? And me, I was traveling, and it was my last vacation that I was so annihilated that I did not get to do anything that vacation that I set out to do. So I
Yep.
was, because it was like a tiny weekend trip, and I was so fucked up that we won't go into that. But I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. So it's the thing is, I like to tell everybody on the listening that rock bottom looks very very different for everybody. You don't have to get arrested, you don't have to end up in a treatment center or in a mental hospital to get help. Like, you could just be blacking out and haven't been in any legal trouble, no DUIs, and see that you have a problem. You don't have to hit the rock bottom of homelessness or jails in order to see that you're going through something and need that help. So I mean, I've said in, like, I think it was like my first second episode, like rock bottom has been explained to me like an elevator. It's just some people get off on a higher floor than others.
I love that. I absolutely agree with that. And to add to that, I think it's also given me a really giant look into not judging others. And to being an advocate, I know a lot of people don't like to identify with the term addict, but I personally do. Like, just for me, I would never call somebody else that because it's not my title to give out. But for myself personally, I do like to refer to myself as that, because I'm also trying to change the way that people think about that. Because I think when you say that word, first of all, it's a very like scary, kind of almost dirty word. And when you say it, I think a lot of people's mind just goes to, like somebody who's street entrenched, or somebody who is, suffering on that elevator a lot lower than, like you were saying. So I love to use that, at least as a self-describer for myself, to remind people that you're right. Like, rock bottom can be different for everybody and anybody. And I'm open about it because of that too. I want people to know that you don't have to feel like some kind of fraud because you haven't gone through something that somebody else has, because everybody's story is different. And if you know in your heart that how you feel isn't right, then it's time to go and get some help. And there's going to be a lot more people that are going to be there for you than you realize, like, seriously.
Yeah, and being open about it is so important because I live a very very professional life. Even when I was drinking, nobody in my surroundings really realized how bad my drinking was. I guess I could handle my liquor a lot better than most, which I mean, I guess was good for me and bad for me at the same time. Um, but now that I'm super open about it, people in my life, I have two very good friends recently that I just found out they're in the recovery as well. One just got out of rehab, and I wouldn't have known that unless I was open about my own journey. And so it allows people to reach out to you. I mean, I get reached out to on social media, on my personal, my Facebook, Instagram, on the Sober Unicorn one, and just people saying, just because of the openness and willingness to discuss your stories that it has allowed them to finally look at themselves and possibly look into treatment or look into getting help through a program. And I mean, there's no right or wrong way in getting sober. And I think that is key because people feel you have to do a 12 step. You don't have to do shit. What you have to do is get look at yourself in the mirror and get sober, whether it's through a program, through rehab, through
Yes.
detox. And that's why I'm very happy to have people like you that weren't program based because it shows people that there is more ways than just one. But I want to go back to that. It's like being non-program based. How'd you do it? Because I know I couldn't have done it.
Well, to be honest with you, it like this is even I'm gonna throw you for like a curveball because I got sober at the worst humanly possible time to ever make that decision because I entered a program and then COVID literally happened like either that week or the week after. And it was like a matter of like the world being completely normal to every single thing shutting down. And it was absolutely devastating because I had gone to this place. There's a place here where I live in Calgary that offered like every kind of program from doing like yoga and meditation to one specifically for women who have experienced trauma. Like you name it, they had a program for it. And I was like, I found my place. And then it was like every single program is shut down except for one, and it's on Zoom, and you can be in that if you want. And I was like, okay, okay. And it was totally not their fault. I am not blaming that facility because it was literally the beginning of what we're still dealing with 2 years in. So you know what I mean. Nobody's to blame for that. It was just really, really, really crappy timing. But that being said, this Zoom. It was basically a group therapy, but first of all, it's pretty hard to do group therapy on Zoom. There's a lot of people talking over each other because it's hard. And the other part is because I was 21 at the time. Again, no hate to any of the people in this program, but a lot of them were talking about, going through divorce or going through problems with their children, things like that. And I was like, I was literally the youngest one there. And oh, it got to a point where I was telling my loved ones, if one more person tells me, like, wow, you're so young, like, I'm going to lose it. Because I literally ended up being like, yeah, you're right. I'm trying not to die at 21. Like, congrats to me. But everyone would always point out how young I was, and I had nothing in common with any of these groups, and I just felt very like it wasn't doing anything for me, and I still wanted to stay sober, and I was very set in that decision because I knew it was what was best. But I decided to get out of that program, and that was fine. It was free. I was glad that I did it. But I decided to move forward, and what helped me was I know for me, this is my personal opinion, but for me, I truly believe that my experience as a queer person, as a queer femme person, is different than somebody who would be like cis het. So it was very important for me to find a queer therapist, hopefully specifically a non-binary person or a woman, and I did find that, and she's awesome. And I've been seeing her for about 2 years now. I see her every 2 weeks, and I'm lucky enough to have insurance through my job, which helps me pay for that. But she does have some different options, and she's also part of something that we have in our city, which is a trans affirming network, which is a network of businesses, corporations, things like that are trans affirmed. They support trans people. They are there to help you know ifs, ands, or buts. So that really, really helped me. I like having just my own therapist, just talking about myself, having my own time. For me, that's what's really helped. And seeing somebody bi-weekly, I know like my partner that I live with sees somebody monthly, and that helps them. So depends, but I think it's really important to talk to somebody. I think it's good. If you do not have insurance with your life, there are a lot of free programs you can look into, whether you're in Canada or the United States. I know, again, if anybody needs help into looking into something like that, my DMs are always open. So yeah.
I think that's so important. Like as you said, to talk to somebody because I think through active addiction and alcoholism, we feel we're alone. And so we feel that nobody's going to understand us. And the moment we finally open the damn door, we realize, holy shit, there's a conglomerate of people that are just like us that we think we're so individual in our addiction. And no, the fuck, you're not. And so just having somebody to listen and talk to and vent to that is 100% understanding on where you're coming from is super, super, super important. Um, and I think that, like as you said, finding a therapist, um, it probably helped. That's probably one of the main reasons you were able to get sober, is you finding somebody that was just willing to listen and be a non-judgmental bitch, because we know that
Yes.
a majority of our community, I'm not going to say everybody because there are some really good people, but I mean, a majority of our community is judgmental. We thrive off of judgment.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's good. And it's good, I think it's same not a lot of people you don't have to be open if you don't want to be. Like that's something too that I want to make sure is important. If you're not ready in that part of your journey, or you just don't want to, like you do not have to. Like that is your business, that is your journey, that is your life. But being open really does bring a lot of community into your life without even realizing it. I've been, open for 2 years now, and the amount of people I've met just by accident, really, and the amount of communities I've opened myself up to with people with so many similar experiences, like it's literally insane. Like you honestly don't realize how not alone you are until you really get into accepting your sobriety and going into sort of looking for those communities and seeking out different people that have been through similar experiences. There are so many. They are everywhere. No matter where you go, they're on the internet, they're in real life. And it's really, really beautiful to know that you're really not alone no matter where you go.
And I think I want to point out, when it comes to, as you said, people were like, "Oh, you're so young, you're so young." I think the people that are older in these rooms, or that are in recovery in general, they probably knew they had a problem when they were younger. But for one, in that day and age, it was not okay to ask for help or admit to any addiction. And two, there was no resources when it came to internet, Google. Um, I mean, now that, I mean, I thank God that we live in a generation now to where a 17-year-old, 16-year-old that struggles is able to literally hop on something that's in their hand and within seconds find the closest therapist, the closest AA, NA, CA, whatever meeting they need to go to, closest therapist, closest support group, and get the help at a lot younger age, so they don't have to wait until they're 50, 60 years old to finally get the help that they need.
Absolutely. I think that, especially when you're young, I think that's when you want to be looking after those things. You want to be looking inside and seeing, what you're struggling with. And I think the more open we are and the younger and we are going into that, the more normalized it will be, because I also knew from a very young age that I had mental health issues. My mental health issues were diagnosed by the time I was about 12 or 13. So that being said too, a lot of it was just that trauma and that hurt and me not dealing with that properly and not having the proper resources to deal with that. And thank goodness, as I aged and as I progressed, I reached those out for myself because I was able to. But yeah, I think it's really important. And that's also another reason why I will always scream from the rooftops that I'm sober, because I want to be that young, queer, loud voice that lets people know that it's okay.
So before we get to the end of the episode, is there anything that you would like to share with everybody that you haven't already?
Um, just that I think go at your own pace. Don't ever feel rushed, but also don't ever feel slowed down. Like, do whatever you feel is best because you know inside what's right. It's sometimes very, very hard to admit it out loud. Sometimes you can admit it to yourself before you can admit it out loud. That's definitely what happened to me. I could admit it to myself for quite a long time before I could actually say the words. But know that it's okay. And there's a lot of time, and you got a lot of people on your side, even if you don't realize it. So yeah. And my DMs are always open. Like I said, if you ever want to talk sobriety, look for resources. I can mostly help looking for resources based in Canada, but I can do my best. And I just want to see everybody be happy and know that no matter what you look like, no matter who you are valid and loved. And yeah, let's take over the world.
Well, as you said, the DMs are open. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Through Instagram. So my Instagram is at Emily Ripley 13. So just my name and then 13. And I post a lot of stuff on there. I do a lot of updates where I'll be performing. Again, it's mostly in Canada, but hopefully someday I can also come see you. We'll work it out. But yeah, lots of updates on there, and my DMs are always open if you're ever sober curious, you ever are looking for resources, or you're ever looking for a fun show to come to in Calgary and you want a sober ally there with you, because that's me and I will be there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Emily, so much for joining us. We are so happy to have you on.
And thank you again for having me. This was so great. And yeah, super, super honored. Thanks again.
Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober-owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.